Foremost, what I've emphasized has been the commercial relationship, the trading relationship, and the direction of that relationship. That view, that relationship's over.
Warning, you are being played. Mark Carney and Doug Ford met for a secret meeting, and what was discussed in this secret meeting is a snap election, fear of Donald Trump, and a super majority for the Liberals, which would end Canada as we know it. We know all the bad bills that they're trying to push forwards. If they got a super majority, Canada would be finished. The stakes are high right now. And I have to say, that's if they're successful. I have my doubts. Us Canadians have a voice, and we're going to make sure that it is, in fact, the Conservatives that come out with a win. It's not all bad news, because if they're successful at getting this super majority, there is one clear winner here: Alberta. Let's get into this report. We woke up this morning to Doug Ford and Mark Carney had a super top secret meeting. Obviously not that secret, because the Globe and Mail came out and said Carney and Ford discuss idea of an early federal election to secure that super majority, sources say. I just want to remind Canadians that Doug Ford was responsible for sabotaging Pierre Poilievre's campaign last federal election, and now he's speaking to his buddy Mark Carney about a super majority and a strategy to get there. I just want to remind Canadians that Mark Carney was elected to get us a win with Donald Trump. He's the only guy, the economic genius banker that flew in from the other side of the world and said he's #1 Canadian and he's going to get us that sweet, sweet deal with Donald Trump. On July 21st, we're almost a year with Mark Carney, and our tariff rates are higher today than ever before, and the renegotiation of the USMCA is like ticking down. We're like 5 months away from this whole thing blowing up. And he travels around the world to get new trade deals and a bunch of MOUs and nothing to actually show for all of those jet fuel that he's been burning. And the #1 trading partner, our #1 customer with like 80% of all our trade going down to the United States, why is he not in Washington, D.C., parked there until a deal is secured? Because without the United States, our country is finished. But there's a strategy. He's more focused on getting a super majority than doing what's right for this country. As long as there's this trade war and fear of Donald Trump is at 1,000%, that is his only way to win, because he can't run on his track record, which is horrific. Let's take a look at the CTV clip reminding Mark Carney and Canadians that our #1 friend and customer, and we need a trade deal.
Prime Minister, I think, very fairly laid out many different ways in which the world is changing and evolving, and what we're having to contend with on everything from the technology revolution to the climate crisis to the rise of China, which is a massive event in geopolitics over the course of the past several decades. So things will change, and therefore the relationship will change. But do I believe that it is the end of a positive, deep, sustained alliance between the United States and Canada to the mutual benefit of both our nations? I do not think that is inevitable, and I think that that would be a very, very negative outcome, because the U.S. and Canada living side by side with one another, benefiting from each other economically, socially, in terms of national security. This has been a fantastic dividend for our peoples. And we have to find a way in new forms with new modes to the relationship to move forward. And that doesn't at all erase the current challenges or difficulties. And I'm not trying to whistle by the graveyard on those. But it does take the long view. It takes the long view about what is fundamentally in the interests of both the United States and Canada.
Mark Carney doesn't care about the relationship with the United States and Canada. 93% of all his net worth is located in the United States and only 0.5 located in Canada. Canada could turn into ashes and it really doesn't matter towards his net worth. So does he really care if the whole thing goes up in smoke? Probably not. Here's Mark Carney claiming that our relationship with the United States trade is officially over.
I've talked about this, the old relationship when it comes to the tight military and security cooperation being over. So what exactly are you picturing, and what does that mean for NORAD?
Well, first and foremost, what I've emphasized has been the commercial relationship, the trading relationship, and the direction of that relationship. It was only a few months ago that many responded to the initial U.S. tariffs and discussions of tariffs by saying, this was not me, to be clear, but some prominent Canadians said, well, we should have a customs union with the United States. We should become closer to the United States. It's clear that that strategy has tremendous risks, would be misguided in my view, and misguided and create tremendous risks. There may be certain sectors where that's the case, but as an overall approach, that view, that relationship's over. As I just said, our military and security relationship is still, with the United States, is still our most important one, without question. So I didn't declare the end of that, and I'm not declaring the end of that. What I have emphasized, and my government has taken action on, is diversifying and reinforcing other aspects of our security partnership. So we signed a major defense agreement with Australia over the Horizon Radar. My trips to Paris and London were partly about deepening our security partnerships with those countries. We're looking on diversification in terms of maritime procurement and other aspects of procurement. We're reviewing the F-35 fighters to make sure that that's the right approach for the country going forward, given the other considerations.
Are you actually okay with Canada moving away from the United States militarily and doing deals with Australia and Europe to buy military equipment and not the United States of America, which has been protecting Canada for over 100 years? Since World War II, we have enjoyed our freedom and our prosperity because of the United States protecting our airspace and our country. Are we forgetting about that? The only reason that we're even able to have a liberal government and have all this left-leaning woke ideology is because of the U.S. protection. Without them, we would have a completely different country today. Report came out this morning that Elections Canada has reportedly ordered 700,000 poll tally sheets to prepare for an upcoming election, with new reports that Mark Carney consulted Doug Ford on possibility of a snap election. Things are happening in Canada. When you hear news like this, they're getting ready. Brian Lilley released a video this morning. I believe he has the best take on this situation. Let's watch it.
Is Doug Ford trying to help Mark Carney win a majority with a snap spring election? Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. Front page of the Globe and Mail on Monday morning. It reads as follows. Ford floated idea of snap federal election in private talks with Carney. They go on to cite a number of anonymous sources describing talks between the two men over the past few weeks, including, well, discussions on the telephone, where it's just the two of them, and discussions at the First Minister's meeting in Ottawa at the end of January. It describes how Ford said worked for him going early to the polls, helped Ford win a third majority government that will take his government's life beyond Donald Trump's second term as president. And that's how Ford pitched it. Problem for Carney is he kind of did a similar pitch in March and April of 2025, and it didn't work. He fell short of a majority. So now he is thinking of a snap spring election. The Liberals are clearly preparing the ground for that. The speech in Davos, poking Donald Trump in the eye, in my view, that was always done as a way to try and get the reaction from President Trump that he got. Why would he do that? Well, because he knew that Trump would react angrily. And when he made bad comments about Canada, well, Carney's voting base would turn and say, see, we need to rally behind the leader. His polling numbers would go up. That's exactly what happened. Whether you're talking Main Street, Leger, Abacus, doesn't matter. Polling numbers for Mark Carney and the Liberals went up. And so that makes it seem more plausible, more palatable that the Liberals would go to the polls early. You look at his decision to enhance the GST rebate, call it the Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit, and double a payment coming this July, as long as Liberals, of course, are reelected if we go to the polls in the springs. So many reasons that the Liberals are setting the groundwork. Look at how they're describing the Conservatives as being obstructionist in Parliament, even as the Conservatives attempt to fast track that GST enhancement, the rebate enhancement, as they try and say, let's move bail reform along quicker, as they try and help the Liberals pass their agenda in areas where they agree, the Liberals are calling them obstructionist. Why? To set the narrative that says, this doesn't work. Parliament's not working. We need a mandate. So Carney's been asking Doug Ford about what he would do. Ford says he went early and it worked for him. For every time that somebody cites Ontario's former Premier David Peterson, that going early will mean you'll be punished by voters at the polls, no, that's not the case. For every one Peterson, there's Jean Chrétien doing it twice. Stephen Harper going early and getting a majority mandate in 2011, going early and getting his second minority in 2008. Justin Trudeau, well, he went early and only got a minority in 2021, but he still won the election. So yes, there are risks for Carney, but don't expect voters to punish him. It's just whether they see him living up to the promise that he made last time, that he could deal with Donald Trump. Does he do that again? Potentially. But there's also another risk at factor here. And that is that if Mark Carney and the Liberals force an early election, and there is a Liberal majority government that is driven by Eastern Canada, Eastern and Central Canada, meaning the Atlantic provinces, Quebec and Ontario, and Alberta, where the Liberals are less popular than they were a year ago, Alberta feels left out, that burgeoning separatist movement, it's going to catch steam. They have not delivered on what Alberta has asked for. They have not delivered on a pipeline. They have had talks of pipelines and memorandums of understanding, but they haven't moved forward with major projects in any significant way. And if they get a majority government based on these premises, I am predicting that Alberta separatist sentiment will only increase. That's a real danger for Mark Carney. Not whether he gets his majority or minority, it's what it does to national unity in this country. And don't forget, Quebec has an independence-minded government likely coming in with an election this October. There are so many factors at play. Doug Ford's advice to Mark Carney of going early might work on, well, one set of voters, especially in the east and central part of the country, but they might cause problems with others. These are some of the things the Liberals are going to have to think about before they pull the trigger, which is what I still think they will do this spring.
I completely agree with Brian Lilly. If this guy calls a snap election, oh yeah, there is an exit plan for Alberta. It's going to explode the separatist movement. They are going to be separating from Canada. So either way, if you're an Albertan, you win if he calls a snap election because you will have your own independent country. But if he calls a snap election and the Conservative win, we might actually get that unity and restore the promise of Canada, where if you work hard, you could get a good life and a great job with a secure family, and we start deporting. Oh, let's take a look at the deporting. Today, Pierre Poilievre came out and said asylum claimants and non-citizens convicted of serious crimes will be barred from Canada and, oh yeah, deported. If he speaks like this, that is how Conservatives are going to win the election. We want real change in this country, and he is speaking our language. It's going to be a tough election for Mark Carney because Canadians are looking around and saying, you haven't done anything good for our country. Canadians are now, they're not satisfied at all with Carney Liberals' approach on housing. Check out this new poll that just came out from Abacus. Only 3% are very satisfied. This is catastrophic. The only thing he could run on is fear of Donald Trump. Nothing else. There's nothing good that has come to this country since he showed up in our lives. Remember the 49,000 Chinese EVs that Mark Carney is going to be bringing into Canada and then rising all the way up to 70,000? There's a new viral video of a Chinese EV going up into flames. Oh boy. Look, the fire's probably it's underneath the batteries.
温M8呀，这个咋这么大火？没有气，这个坏的。前面。
How many of you are going to be lining up for one of these beautiful Chinese EVs? Warning, you might have to bring a couple of fire extinguishers. You know our brand new relationship with China and how we're forming new trading partnership and economic ties and sharing top secret police information. Anita Anand just came out with a brand new statement regarding Jimmy Lai. Canada is disappointed with the sentencing of a pro-democratic media figure, Jimmy Lai, today in Hong Kong. Mr. Lai is 78 years old in poor health, and we call for his immediate humanitarian release. Canada will continue to support free and independent media worldwide. Can you actually believe this, Canada? And check out some of these comments. Didn't the RCMP just sign a security framework with the CPP? Oh, come on, Canada. New strategic partnership would never abuse human rights, would they? Prime Minister Carney forges a new strategic partnership with the People's Republic and China. Can you believe it, Canada? Disappointed with your new strategic partnership? Would you have ever have thought China's not strategically aligned with Canada? They're not our friend. This is a reminder, isn't it? Or hey, let's have a bilateral trade deals with a communist country, you morons. Exactly. It makes zero sense. And this is what happens when you have Trump derangement syndrome all across the country and they use mainstream media to rise up all this fear so that we go and run to China to have strengthening our economic ties, and it blows up in our faces. And we got some breaking news. Frank Caputo has just come out and said, questions abound. PM Carney said China was Canada's greatest security threat, yet he signed a memorandum of understanding with China last month on matters of intelligence sharing. So what does the MOU say? Well, that's the problem. We don't even know. The government haven't released it. See my formal request. So Frank Caputo has written a letter to the Prime Minister saying, you need to release the information on this MOU that you signed with China, sharing top secret police intel and coordinations. Like, what is going on in our country? We need transparency. We need to know what Mark Carney's signing. And you're not going to believe this one. Canada's immigration system is just perfect. This person in committee actually says that the millions upon millions of people that we brought into this country has zero, and I mean absolutely zero effect on Canada's real estate system and pricing and rents. It does nothing. Are you kidding me? I think it should be a requirement. If you serve in our government, you need to take at least a basic 101 economy class.
The limitations I put before you are not actually public will. They are government policy. But the policy choices are given cover from dangerous narratives that have taken hold and have been fanned over the past 2 years by all levels of government and across party lines.
1 minute.
The narratives wrongly blame current pressures on housing and social systems. They're not only false, it's dangerous, and it undermines confidence in the immigration and refugee system.
I just wanted to go back to something you said earlier. You claim that there's no correlation between rapid immigration growth of the last several years and the decrease of Canada's available housing supply. Is that correct?
Yes, more or less. I think they're...
So you think that, like, even though we had millions of people come in, that had no impact on housing supply or prices in Canada?
I'm saying that the factors that drive the cost of housing and the availability of housing are much more related to the questions of the financialization of housing as an asset, rent control, so policies that are...
You don't think bringing in millions of people in a very short period of time like that had no impact on housing, even though like major economists and most Canadians' lived experience says otherwise. I'm just asking from a perspective so that we can qualify your comments in a further report, because that seems a little bananas to me.
So I appreciate that there's a sort of a natural logic of input supply must have an immediate effect on demand.
Thank
And
you.
I am sure in
all I need
specific
from you. With the
markets that
time
there
I
are.
have left.
That's it for today's report. I agree with Michelle. This Liberal government has gone completely bananas. What do you think? There is an exit plan for Alberta. If they steal a majority government by drumming up all this fear of Donald Trump, Alberta is going to get their independence. I'm moving to Alberta. I'm sure you're probably contemplating it. We need to rise up and educate our fellow Canadians so that won't happen. We need unity. We need a conservative government. I'm going to provide everybody lots of updates. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. I'll see you on the next report.